computer.
Got it.
Greetings all, and welcome to the All Things Happy and Healthy vlog. I'm Elle Grinnell with TrueSpeak, and I'm very excited today because, as you know, if you've been following along on the vlog, I've been bringing in guests because after a year of doing this every week, I realized that I wanted to let you all know that we can never claim to know it all. And if you claim to know it all, then you're in big trouble. And today you're going to be learning some things that you didn't even know you didn't know. And so I'm excited to have today as my guest, Dr. Mort, or Dr. Mort Orman. And he'll be speaking to us about how to be a low stress person in a high stress world. He's an internal medicine physician and is a 40-year stress elimination expert. He has specifically been the official sponsor of the National Stress Awareness Month in the United States every April since 1992. So he has a wealth of knowledge to share with us today. So with that, I'm going to say, take it away, Dr. Mort.
Well, thank you very much for having me as a guest on your show. The topic, as you mentioned, is how to become a low stress person in a high stress world. And the first thing I want to say whenever I talk about that topic is that nobody believes that's possible.
Right.
The first thing we have to confront is the fact that we've all been brainwashed to believe that it's absolutely impossible to live a stress-free life or to be a very low stress person, because we've been told that life is inherently stressful and modern life is inherently mega stressful, and that there's no possibility of living life in a stress-free state in today's modern society. And I found out 40 years, I used to believe that, by the way, when I was a young physician starting out in practice 45, 50 years ago, I had that same belief. And I confirmed it in my own experience because I had a lot of stress as a young physician. I was angry a lot, I was frustrated, I was irritable, I was even depressed at times, and I had relationship problems and all this stuff that I had tried to get rid of, and I couldn't do it. So in my own experience, I had sort of confirmed that belief that it's not possible to live a stress-free life.
Right.
And I believed it was always going to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a part of me that still, I wanted to get free of it. I wanted to solve this problem that I hadn't been able to win at. And almost everything else in my life that I had really put my mind to, I was able to figure out how to win at. And this was really sticking in my craw because it really bugged me that I could not figure this out. And I kept doing all the things that were recommended to do, all the stress management stuff that was recommended. I read a lot of books. I went to seminars and workshops, and it just wasn't making a difference.
Yeah.
I even went into therapy while I was a medical student, and in my residency, I went into therapy because I was so anxious. And I was nervous speaking in public, and I could never do something like this. I would just be petrified. And I truly believe that, on one hand, that it was always going to be that way, but there was this little spark inside of me that kept saying, well, maybe there's a possibility that I could get rid of this stuff. And I had nothing to confirm that. You know, I had no experience, no evidence, and nobody else was saying that. But so I started doing some personal development stuff, and I started learning things about myself that I had never been taught, and about human beings I'd never been taught in medical school. You know, in medical school, they don't teach you how to take care of human beings. They teach you how to take care of lungs and livers and hearts and kidneys and stuff. They don't teach you about human beings. And they certainly don't teach you how to deal with stress. It's the opposite. They teach you how to have stress. So I was very stressed, like most of my colleagues were, and many of them still are today. And but I kept searching, and I kept looking, and I finally hooked up with some people that were really progressive thinkers, that were out of the box thinkers, that were willing to challenge a lot of the prevailing beliefs. And I had this breakthrough about 40 years ago where I realized that just about everything I believed about stress, that I had been taught about stress, wasn't really true. And as soon as I opened that door where I was willing to consider that, what if all this stuff that people believe is true isn't true? And then I started pursuing that. I eventually found some truths. You talk about TrueSpeak. I actually found some truths about, stress that enabled me to start, for the first time in my life, being able to control my emotions, being able to improve my relationships, being able to get rid of anxiety and cure myself of public speaking fear. And all the stuff I thought I was going to be saddled with for the rest of my life, I found out I didn't have to be. But I had to have a complete shift in mindset to be able to do that. And I had to be willing to admit that almost everything that people were being taught back then and are still being taught today is a bunch of garbage. And it keeps people stressed. The people who are out there, a lot of the people who are out there trying to help people by teaching them to think this way are actually hamstringing people and making it more and more difficult and almost impossible for them to become low stress people. The best they can do is ratchet their stress down a little bit, but they have to work, through stress management. You have to work real hard to do that like every day. Yeah. And that puts extra stress on you, not to mention the stress you already have in the first place. So I discovered like 40 years ago that stress management was not the best way to deal with stress. And it really didn't work for me that much. And when I recommended it to my patients, it didn't work so much for them. What I found out is I had to completely change my whole mindset about stress. And I had to realize, for the first thing I had to realize was that stress was not the problem. I used to think stress was the problem. Yeah. Turns out stress is just a word. It's just a buzzword. It's just a concept. Mm-hmm. That whenever I said to myself I was stressed or suffering from stress, I really wasn't suffering from stress. I was suffering from a lot of other problems in my life that really were real, like getting angry all the time, getting frustrated, getting irritated, having relationship problems. Those were all very real problems, being afraid to speak in public. And this term stress it's almost like a unicorn. It's like you can chase it all you want, but you'll never catch it. And the reason you won't catch it is because it's not real. I mean, it's real as a word,
right?
But it's not real as a thing or a condition. There's lots of conditions that we have, like diabetes, appendicitis, stuff that I was very familiar with. The words are really real. You get appendicitis, that's something real. Right. That's not just a word. But stress is like this little story, this little fable that we made up, like the Truth Fairy or Santa Claus, and say, oh, we suffer from stress. Well, no, you're not suffering from stress. You're suffering from problem. So the first thing I did almost 40 some years ago on the path to freeing myself up from stress, and I can tell you the last 40 years of my life have been almost completely stress-free. Or if I did get stressed, I knew how to get rid of it very, very quickly because I could understand the source of where it was coming from, and which I didn't understand before. But when I realized that stress was just a word, and I made that little switch in my mind that every time I said I was stressed, it just meant I was having problems. What that forced me to do was now I had to get specific. Okay, what are the problems I'm having when I say I'm suffering from stress? And I would do that. And then I was, okay, now how am I going to deal with each of these problems? Instead of lumping them all together in one big basket, and just dealing with the symptoms, which is what stress management mainly teaches us to do. I said, no, I don't want to do that. I want to get at the causes of these problems, and I want to investigate the causes and see what I can do about it.
Yeah, that reminds me of interjecting. When I work with weight management with those folks, one of the mantras I get them is, you're not watching your weight, you're watching your plate. And that's what you're talking about. We're talking about the root, the cause, the problem.
Yeah. And what I realized was that, if you walk up to people today and say, what are the most common root causes of your stress? What are they going to tell you? Well, it's my boss, it's my job, it's the economy, it's COVID, it's my spouse, it's my kids, it's my employees, it's those rascally Republicans or those crazy Democrats or Congress or whatever. It's going to be something like that they're going to blame the stress on. And it's not that those things aren't real,
right?
But they're all external. They're all outside of us. And what we don't tend to do, and we haven't been trained to do, and stress management experts are not teaching people how to do, for the most part, is identify the internal causes of our stress. And there are lots of ways we think and understand and believe and theorize about, or strategies that we have that aren't all that great, or we have false beliefs, misunderstandings that we haven't corrected. And if you walk around with a lot of those, you're going to have more problems in life. And then you're going to say you're stressed, when actually what it means is you're having problems that you didn't need to have if you just get your thoughts in proper alignment and
Mhm.
with reality and how the world actually works, instead of how we've been taught to believe it works, which usually is pretty
Yeah.
far off the mark. Like, for example, you talk about happiness. There's so many crazy ideas about happiness that we've been indoctrinated to believe. It's no wonder why a lot of people can't discover how to be happy,
Right.
because they've been told, well, you have to have this or that, or it's going to be down the road, 5 years, and then you'll be happy. And that's crazy talk.
It is.
Even the talk, even the Declaration of Independence, that we have a right to pursue happiness,
Right.
sets us up for a mindset that's ridiculous. Happiness is not gotten by pursuit. Well, I mean, you can, some forms of happiness you can get by pursuing it, but why not be happy all the time? And when you're in the act of pursuing all these other sources of happiness that you want,
Mhm.
the truth is, as human
Absolutely.
beings, we can be happy anytime we want.
Yes.
And this, but we've all been taught that that's not possible. It's almost like the same thing. We've been taught you can't live a stress-free life, but it's actually possible if we just got all this other garbage out of our heads that we've been fed, that's keeping us from exploring. Now, you can't just snap your fingers and say, I'm going to be a low stress person. It takes
Right.
work,
Yes.
and you have to identify a lot of stuff within you that's inconsistent with the way the world actually works. And then you have to go to work on those things and rectify them and build and put in better, newer ideas and newer philosophies and principles that you
Mhm.
get from other people, hopefully, like yourself and other people that are out there helping people correct a lot of their mistaken assumptions and misunderstanding. And that builds a foundation, where if you do enough of that, you can actually live pretty much stress-free, even though all the experts will tell you that's a pipe dream. And you shouldn't waste your time thinking that way, because it's just going to lead you to more disappointment and heartache. And I say there are people already being disappointed by the promises that stress management makes, that's the way to win the stress game.
Mhm.
And in my world, even if you get really good at stress management, you're not going to really win the game that way, the way you could if you
Right.
were able to deal with causes. And then, to my world, you win the stress game when you know how to identify the causes of your stress, particularly the ones inside you, and you know how to fix them and do something about them so they don't keep causing recurring problems in your life.
Exactly. We talk a lot on this blog about neuroplasticity and how when you label stress and you attach something and you put that little sticker on it, you keep you just keep making that trench in your mind deeper. This is what stress looks like. This is how I got stressed. This is how I'm staying stressed. And the only way to be able to kind of flip that switch, so to speak, is to ask better questions. And you started out with one really that I really like. What if? What if I wanted to be happy? What would that look like? What if I wanted to eliminate some problems that, I feel are stressing me out? Ask yourself, what do you want instead of what do you not want?
And not just that, but the big what if for me that opened the door back 40 some years ago was, what if everything that the people are teaching about stress isn't true? And I
Mhm.
got to tell you, as a science-based physician, as an internal medicine physician, I knew there was a lot of science about stress.
Mhm.
And for me to question the wisdom of that scientific basis that people were, understanding stress through, that took a lot, to be able to just to be willing to
Yeah.
to ask the question, what if it's wrong? And then open that door and walk through it, and then actually challenge certain beliefs and question them and do the work, finding out, well, if it's not, that's not true, what is true? And then you have to find people, and that's work too. You have to find people, and you have to go, apprentice yourself to them and study with them and learn from them and open your mind to all kinds of new ways of thinking. That takes effort. It takes determination. It takes dedication. It takes a commitment. You just don't, flip that switch, the what if switch, and that's done. It's done. It opens the door,
Yes.
maybe. But
Yes.
if you don't have the courage to walk through that door and pursue the implications and to
Mhm.
actually tell the truth, what's true? What is it that people are saying about stress that is true? And what is this? Like, for example, stress can definitely make you sick, whatever you call it, whatever it is.
Mhm.
I mean, people having a lot of problems in life that are unresolved. And I saw this every day in my practice. I saw people that were living with lots and lots of unresolved problems in their life. And it would catch up with them sooner or later. They'd have a heart attack or a stroke or some
Mhm.
other crazy disease that was probably related to stress in some way. And I was seeing that every day, So people in other occupations, you don't get it put in your face like that. Like what's coming down the line for you if you don't handle your own stress. And me as a physician, I
Right.
knew that I had an imperative. I had to figure this out because I knew I could see every day what the consequences were, and I didn't like it. It wasn't a pretty picture. Not to mention all the non-health related stuff like getting divorced, having business partnerships break up, losing your relationship with your kids, just all kinds of horrible things that happen when people get stressed out and don't know how to, really surmount it. So
Yeah,
I kind of was forced to have to do something.
I get that. I love your journey, and I'm so glad that it brought you, to this moment. And while you were talking, it reminded me, because we were chatting before, and so if you tell the story would be better. Something about how the word stress was created at a certain date in time, like prior to that, there were low stress levels. What was that?
The word stress came into use in around the 1940s, sometime 1940s, and it was brought into being by a man named Hans Selye, who was an Austrian-born physician, and he's credited as being like the father of modern stress research. So he was the first. He was an endocrinologist, and he was the first one that figured out all these hormonal changes in the body that happen when people are, quote, stressed. Okay, or he was actually working on animals at the time, but he opened up that whole field. And he knew he was creating a whole new field of science, and he needed a language, he needed to be able to communicate, and he needed to call it something. So he called it stress. But it's the first book that he wrote for the public about all of his research. Very early in that book, he makes a statement. He says, look, you got to remember, there's really no such thing as stress. It's just an abstraction. I had to invent this term to be able to communicate with my colleagues.
Right.
But don't forget, it's not a real thing. It doesn't really exist. And so, but people forgot that. But prior to 1940, nobody suffered from stress. Isn't that amazing? We went through World War I, World War II, Korean War, all kinds of other things. And people had a lot of issues around those things. But nobody said, I'm stressed by all this. And all those physiologic things that were going on in our bodies were going on in their bodies from those problems. But we just didn't have this term stress to refer to it and talk about it. And now we put every imaginable problem that's negative that we don't want under the umbrella called stress. And when you and I are sitting around, the water cooler or the lunch table and saying, oh, I'm feeling really stressed today. And you say, oh, I'm feeling stressed today too. We have no idea what you're experiencing and what I'm experiencing. They're probably two very different things. I may be stressed because I'm having a fight with my wife or something. And you may be stressed because you got angry at somebody or you're worried about COVID or what. We just use this term and assume that it means the same thing to everybody. It doesn't. There's thousands of different problems that we can have that we use this term stress. And we got to get more specific. We got to stop using this general nonsense unicorn term and start saying, okay, I'm having this problem, I'm having this problem, and this problem, and now how do I, and then asking people, I need help with my anger. How do I deal with that?
Yes.
I had a fellow call me up the other day. He's retired. He bought a new RV, and he and his wife went on their first trip, and it was his first time driving the thing. And he was the driver, and he was getting blown around by weather and by trucks driving by at high speeds and things. He wasn't familiar with it, and he was cursing up a storm, getting angry. And when they got home after the trip, his wife said to him, I'm not going on another RV trip with you again until you get your anger problem handled. So he now had the incentive to do something. So he called me up because I met him on Facebook. So he called me up and he said, is that something you can help me with? And I said, absolutely, I can help you do that. But you see, he had to take that initiative to say, I'm having a problem with anger. It's not stress, it's anger. And here's the situation, here's why it occurred, and I need help in figuring out how to overcome it. And we're working now, and he's actually making great progress already. It's been just a couple of weeks. His wife's already noticing the difference in him because we're digging into the problem. I'm not trying to manage his stress or help him deal with stress.
Yeah.
I'm helping him deal with a specific issue that he gets angry. It turns out his whole family is full of anger, and he just grew up in an angry family, and he just doesn't know how to be angry. And they're all angry. And he's the one that stepped up and said, I want to do something about it. And his wife kind of said, you better do something about it. So he's motivated, and he's digging into the real issue. And that's how you can become a low stress person. Like I said, I used to be very, very angry. And in the last 40 years, I've hardly been any had any anger at all. It takes a lot to get me angry now. And because I discovered what the source of the anger was coming from me, very specifically, how I was making myself angry. And I was able to fix it once I could discover that. And so I've been free of anger. People would say that's not possible, or it's hard, it's like miraculous that somebody can go from, I mean, I was like John McEnroe on the tennis court when I played tennis. I mean, I was like a basket case. And I probably broke as many rackets as he did during his career. And I don't do that anymore.
Right.
I don't get angry anymore. And because it's possible. Not only is it possible, people have done it. I've taught other people how to do those kinds of things. So it's very real, very real.
You just shared with us someone you're working with recently. And so because we're wrapping up, how can people continue to spend more time in this belief with you and learn how to make it their truth?
Well, I think there's two things. I have a website, docorman.com, that people can go to. And that's my general website. But I'm starting to offer these 1 hour trainings or conversations similar to what we're doing today, but in a little more depth, where I go into the 3 biggest mistakes that most business owners and entrepreneurs are making as far as dealing with stress and how they can overcome them. And that's a free 1 hour Zoom call. And there's no selling or anything. It's just free education where I talk to you, share some more of my ideas about stress and what I learned back 40 some years ago that really helped me. And you can sign up for that. It's free. You can go to stressfreebusinessowners.com. And that'll lead you to a page where you can go down to the calendar and sign up. They're every Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern. And you can sign up for one that works for you and your schedule. I'd be happy to continue this discussion with anybody that's interested.
I love that so much that you have an 8 p.m. for those of us in Honolulu, where a lot of my folks are. So grateful that people consider our time zones. That's wonderful. I highly recommend that because business is what a lot of people claim as a major stressor for them. And, COVID, of course, made that even worse. And once you start to see there's a different way to perceive this, once you start to see there's a different way to get to the source of this, then you can start affecting change. But as long as it's just something you've got running amok in your head, it's just going to continue to get worse.
Or that you believe you have no power or control over, that society has told you you're kind of a victim of stress, and that's just as good as it's going to get. So give up, forget about getting free of it. That's not humanly possible. Well, that's another false idea that we've been given by the people who are trying to help us, but they're actually hurting us in the process.
I agree. And that kind of ties into the final piece here. But I'd like you to just pluck out anything. So all the folks suffering from stress or meandering down the streets, and you have the rooftop and somebody hands you the megaphone, microphone. So what's your rooftop message? What's the one thing you'd want all of those people to know that they probably don't?
There's a lot of things I would want to know, but if I only could tell them one thing quick, like a quick hit type thing, I would say, stop using the word stress. Stop using that word. It's a crazy word. What you want to do whenever you hear that word, if you're saying it or somebody else is saying it, just switch it to problems and you'll be much better off. You'll be headed in the right direction. And you'll realize it'll force you to believe or to know that your problem is not stress. Your problem is all the other problems that you're having in life that you need to start focusing on and getting help with or figuring out on your own how you can solve those problems individually. And you keep doing that and get good at that. And you will find out that you can actually live a stress-free or mostly stress-free life that you did not believe was possible and that everybody will tell you is not possible. I'm proof that it's possible, and other people I've worked with are proof that it's possible. But everybody still, it's a prevailing belief that's got a lot of traction behind it and a lot of support behind it. And despite the fact that it's wrong, everybody tends to believe it.
And I myself am stress-free, which is why the vlog began, All Things Happy and Healthy. I wake up happy. I love life. And that doesn't mean things don't happen to me. It doesn't mean I don't have problems, but the snapback is really quick. And what I found is, and you probably experience this as well, I'm guessing, people either find it inspirational and contagious in a good way, my happiness, or it bugs the crap out of them and they don't want to be and you are near me. So,
Yeah, well, happiness is just the flip side of stress. I mean, it's hard to be happy and stressed at the same time. It's like if you get rid of your stress, you're going to naturally be happier. And I believe as human beings, our natural state is to be happy and unstressed. And if you're not happy most of the time, then you're doing something. You may not be aware of how you're doing it, but something's going on in your head or in your consciousness that's suppressing your natural happiness, keeping you from experiencing it or feeling it or living it. And the same thing with stress. If you're stressed and life is not really stressful, like they tell you it is, but if the truth is it's not, then you got to be doing something to be generating that stress.
exactly.
And you may not know what it is, but you either figure it out yourself or get somebody to help you figure it out. And you will find that there's something there that you're thinking or doing that you weren't aware you were thinking or doing that's causing a lot of those problems that you're experiencing. And if you stop doing those things or correct those things, you can be free of whatever that problem is and multiply that times a bunch of other problems. And you eventually get a stress-free life if you get pretty good at it.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
I know. I love everything that you do and all of your work and all the lives you are saving, literally, because we know that, stress kills, so to speak.
It absolutely does. A lot of people
Yeah.
died in the last 2 years during the COVID epidemic because they were stressed, because they were emotionally worked up and they couldn't make wise decisions for themselves, or they got into accidents, or they got addicted, or who knows what happened. But people died from stress. Not directly, but indirectly, they died from stress during COVID because it was so stressful for so many people. Lose their businesses, stuff happens, and you have suicides, you have all this kind of stuff that happened as a result of the fact that people didn't go into COVID with a good system for, handling the stress. Like I had a really good system that I've had for 40 years. I had very little stress from the COVID epidemic.
Exactly.
I had few sleepless nights, few anxieties, worries. I knew exactly how to deal with it because I had this proven system that I've been working for 40 years to perfect and be able to utilize. And it served me very well. And most people didn't have that. So they succumbed,
Yes, it is so true. And I'm right there with you. Weathered the storm very well. And when you practice what you preach, right, you're not all talk and you lead by example, life is amazing. So I promise everybody that's watching right now, I'll have the links here where you can be able to get to that weekly workshop. You can go to the website and learn more information, and you can begin your journey for healing and getting to the root of the problem so that you can solve those problems are solvable. Stress is not. So you want to spend more time with Dr. Mort. And as always, like and subscribe. That makes me happy. Put anything you'd like in the comments. And if they're specifically for Dr. Mort, I will make sure that he gets them. And so for now, yes.
Can I say one thing?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's not a weekly series of workshops. It's one workshop that I do every week. So you only have to do it once. And you'll get the benefit of it. It's not something you have to keep doing every week or anything.
Okay.
You can choose any week that works for you and just do it one time.
Thanks for that clarity. Yeah, so it's easy. Just pop in, learn what you don't know that you don't know. It will be the fun and exciting and light bulb spark moment for you. So until next week, my friends, stay happy and healthy. And I'm looking forward to more fun and excitement. Thanks again for your time, Dr. Mort.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.